Hiya folks, JD here, and today I've got a new little video that I'm trying out. I've been asked a lot of questions. I don't normally get a lot of time to respond to those questions, so what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to take the more questions I get asked about a particular subject, then I will answer that with a video. So what today's video is all about, it's all about pre-flight checks. So I've had a load of emails over the past maybe 4 or 5 months. Thank you for sending them. Sorry if I haven't replied to them all. I have tried to reply to as many as possible. Now the pre-flight checks, a lot of the questions I've had, 2 of them in particular is, am I still doing the pre-flight checks, as I don't say them all the time in the start of my videos, and how do you ensure you do a pre-flight check properly. So what I'm going to look at today is a pre-flight check from the quadcopter's point of view, from 2 different types of quadcopter. Obviously there is another perspective when it comes in pre-flight checks, and that is where you're flying. I'll come to that a little bit later in this video. Okay, so we start off first with a larger quadcopter, pre-flight checks of a particular larger quadcopter. So what you would do is, whenever I go out and whenever I fly, especially with quadcopters like this, the ones that I haven't had to attach a lot of parts to, so I always try and carry a screwdriver and a couple of tools in the bag that I take all my quadcopters up to fly. And what I normally do is I go through and I double check every single screw hole, every single screw which is inside this quadcopter. I just make sure it's all nice and tight. It only has to be thumb tight and then a quarter is what I do, just to ensure that things aren't too tight, but they are tight enough. Make sure that there is nothing stopping. If it's a folding quadcopter like this, make sure there is nothing stopping the arms fully extending. If there is, have a little look and find out why there could be things inside there. Make sure that every single propeller rotates properly as well, and there's nothing stopping it. You can do it both ways just to ensure that everything's working fine. Obviously what I try and do as well is I connect my transmitter to my quadcopter in the house here, and then I hold on to the quadcopter, usually via its landing sprigs, and I just increase the speed ever so slightly just to ensure that all 4 motors engage at exactly the same time. I don't want 3 motors to be engaged and then 1 motor 3 or 4 seconds later, because that'll cause the quadcopter to fly all over the place and he won't get a proper takeoff. So that's just a couple of things that I do are from the top of the quadcopter. The underside of the quadcopter, if there's a camera, I make sure that the camera is properly plugged in and locked in place as well. Also that the battery is nice and secure, and that the landing sprigs are in nice and secure as well, because more often than not the landing sprigs are the bits that you're going to have to just assemble yourself. Now the worst thing that could happen in my eyes is, as you're flying, a landing sprig comes off and therefore you can't control the quadcopter and bring it into a proper landing. But also at the same time you want to ensure that the quadcopter itself isn't going to spin off in a particular direction just because the weight on the left hand side or right has altered from when it first took off. Now there are just a couple of things of what I do with larger quadcopters. Now with the smaller quadcopters, what I do as well, just put this to one side, I ensure that, like, for 9 out of 10 times, whenever you get a nanocopter or a smaller quadcopter, you aren't going to have to do any assembly with it at all. But once again, I just ensure that every single screw is all done up nice and securely, as I say, done up a little bit thumb tight and then a quarter of a turn, just to ensure that that is nice and tight, but not too tight. Make sure that there's no plastics have snapped, or that there's no cracks, or that there's no cracks in the corner of any of the mouldings. Ensure that once again the propellers move, the on and off button works as well. Also another good thing to do as well, especially with some of the larger quadcopters, is take it outside, normally outside in your own garden, spin up the quadcopter and then kill the quadcopter, and then turn off the transmitter and see if the quadcopter stops. That's another good thing that you would need to do, just to ensure the quadcopter, should there be any sort of emergencies, the quadcopter can stop and bring itself down without there being any issues as well. Make sure that all LEDs work so you can see it from every angle, because the worst thing you want to do is find out that the front works but you can't see the back. And also the most important one, I think, is ensure that the battery inside if you've got access to it, isn't bulging in any way. Because if it is, that could be catastrophic. It could mean a couple of things. Either the battery isn't going to hold its proper charge, it's going to stop working halfway through, or the worst one, it's going to leak and destroy your quadcopter. So that's just a couple of things of what I do with the pre-flight checks. Yes, I do pre-flight checks every single time that I take a quadcopter, a remote control car, a remote control boat, an aeroplane and a remote control helicopter out. But I don't say it as much anymore. I do in a couple of videos, but yes, you're right. For more often than not, I don't say it, and there's no particular reason for that. It's just that I have my own set way of doing pre-flight checks inside the house before I go out and I fly outside the house. So that's just kind of the way that I work it. I will be adding it back into the videos though. I think it is something good that I do need to say, just to remind people to do them before they fly. So that's just 2 examples on 2 quadcopters. Now obviously I did say that there's the outside pre-flight check as well. You know, there's nothing that's going to harbour you from flying, and that you're not around a lot of people. So for argument's sake, for what I do, what I look for is I look for a nice, clean area that I can fly in. I look where there's no people, I look where there's no overhead cables, I look for there to be no trees or anything overhanging. Trees around the outside, that's not a problem, but you don't want them where you're flying. And also, don't take quadcopters out in extreme weather. They are just a couple of things that I look for when flying. Now I've been doing this for some years, so if I notice that something isn't right, I will just not fly. I would rather turn around and say, sorry guys, there's no video, rather than fly something and make it look dangerous. I don't like that at all. So there we are folks, I hope this has helped. I hope you can now go through and start to look at your quadcopters and think, oh actually, maybe I'll just have a little look and see whether this is correct for me to fly. If you've got any more questions, please keep them coming. I will try my best as always to answer your questions. Obviously that may take a little bit of time, so I'm not ignoring you. I will eventually get around to you. Thanks ever so much for watching folks. I've been JD, you've been fantastic as always. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Hello and welcome to all the new subscribers. I hope you're enjoying the channel. So until next time my friends, happy flying.